What's up, y'all? It's Dr. Paul with Liberty Hill Comics, where I share my passion and over 40 years of experience comic book collecting, investing, and conservation with you. Today I'm going to continue the conservation on this copy of Avengers #1, the first appearance of the Avengers from November 1963 by Stan the Man Lee and Jack King Kirby. If you are a comic book collector, this book should require no introduction. This copy belongs to a friend of the channel and we're conserving it for them. In episode 1, we did an assessment of the book and developed a game plan for the conservation process. And in episode 2, we did a dry clean of the exterior of the book, front and back cover. In episode 3, we disassembled the comic and dry cleaned the reverse or interior of the cover, but concluded that video with the discovery that some of the inks on the reverse were not well adhered to the cover at all. In fact, just a gentle wipe with a dry cotton round removed a significant amount of black ink from the interior. This led me to question our plan to remove the tide marks, water stains, and tanning from the book with an aqueous bath, because if the inks lifted with a dry cotton round, I was not certain they would stay fast in an aqueous bath. So, in episode 4, I reviewed the background and history of photobleaching of paper and the various aqueous solutions one can use to optimize the outcome when using blue LEDs, and which ones I recommend for conservation work, concluding with the specific method I use. Follow the link in the upper right corner if you want to get caught up with any of those videos before watching this video. In today's video, I'm going to perform a bit more dry cleaning of some of the black inks on the reverse and perform the tear seals on the interior of this cover. But before we get into our main video, I want to remind everyone that we blew through our 800 subscriber goal and set a new goal of 1,000 subscribers. And in appreciation of subscribers new and old, I announced I'm giving away this copy of Star Wars #1 in CGC 7.5 with white pages. This is the first appearance of Luke, Leia, Vader, R2, 3PO, and a host of other characters, and was published 6 weeks before A New Hope opened in theaters in 1977. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and follow the link over to that video to comment there for a chance to win. So let's get started. The beautiful obverse here. And we're going to be working on some of these inks that smeared with the cotton round and a few other areas that I noticed. Now, probably I should have done this before I did the bled with the calcium hydroxide, but it is what it is. I'm going to be working with my white eraser 3.8 millimeter, so this is tight area. I'm going to get in between here. Just it looks a little bit smeared in here, and we already have these faded inks, so when you have ink smeared in between them, it makes the faded ink look even worse. So if you can whiten up the area in between the faded ink, you can make it look just a little bit darker. So like I said, this is tight quarters. I'm starting with the 3.8 millimeter. I've got a little bit of that ink built up, so I'm going to just clear it off on my hobby mat. When you see that black buildup and when your eraser boogers come off really dark, you know you're cleaning, you're lifting something. In this case, it's actually ink that's in the gutter in between the area that's supposed to be printed with text. So I'm just going to go over all this area. I'm going to go back and forth. I'm going to take my time. Not a lot of pressure here. With this 3.8 millimeter eraser, you have a relatively small contact point. So if you put much force, you actually have a very high pressure. This will lift glosses. The paper here doesn't really have any gloss to speak of, so we're not too worried about that. Silver Age book. with pretty dull gloss. So as I mentioned, I probably should have done this before the bled treatments in the strict order of operations, but this also gives me a belief that this smeared ink didn't really move with our calcium hydroxide mist and the bled. So it's probably going to tolerate a wetting in order to do our tear seal. So that's a good sign. Important to clean up the area. So you see I take a brush. Sometimes I can't see the areas I've been over very well if I have a lot of eraser boogers still sitting in the gutters. So, especially as I'm getting closer to being done with an area, you'll see me brushing more and more. Here I'm going to brush away where I used my hobby mat to clear my eraser as well, because I'm going to move the page and I don't want to pull it through those dirty eraser crumbs. This is the other area where I had some smeared ink. The two main areas where the cotton round just pulled the black and off the page and ran it into the whites, into the gutters. Here I'm struggling with this small text, getting this 3.8 millimeter eraser into those gutters. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this Mono Zero. This is 2.3 millimeter. And this is also a white eraser, but this is a smooth PVC. The other one is actually a little bit rougher of a surface. Here it's even more true because you have such a tiny surface area. Any force you create generates large pressures, so be cautious with these tools. Again, especially on highly glossed areas, you will rip the gloss off a book pretty quickly with these if you're not careful. So I think both these areas look quite a bit brighter just by cleaning the gutters up from this kind of muddy look. Just dried ink that's been rolled into those areas. And by cleaning it up, we just make the text pop a little more. Now that I have those two areas I was concerned about done, I'm going to broaden my search a little bit and see if there are any other areas I can clean up a little with these tighter tools. Of course, we did already dry clean this before we started our bled process in the last episode. So it's 2 episodes ago that we did our primary dry cleaning here, and that's where we got the bulk of our dry cleaning on the interior done. Really pleased with where this book is at right now, and excited to do these tear seals. Had some trepidation about, as you know, I like to do the tear seal with the entire page wet because I don't want differential contraction as the page dries to create crinkles, because we're literally gluing the page while it's undergoing differential contraction. You get wrinkles in the paper that are very difficult to press out. So I'm pretty confident in being able to dampen this page so that I can get the whole page in a position to be where I can do the tear seals without differential contraction and introducing waviness that's difficult to press later. I have again my LED ring light at the bottom of the video here, so I have a 10x magnifier on that, and that's why I'm moving the page around. I'm just moving it around so that I can get, with my ergonomic seating, I can get good light and magnification right into the areas where I need to work. So I just noticed a few in this little price bubble for Mike Marble's send away for Dynaflex. Just want to clean those up. Scanning the page for any other spots. I noticed this coupon has a few just little dirty areas. Again, you can just really brighten an area. Notice when I get close to that rip, I'm going to put my finger right over the rip to stabilize the paper. It's probably best practice, just leave my finger there. Switch back to the Mono Zero 2.3 millimeter diameter PVC eraser. And just clean this little order box up. I think the owner's going to be really pleased with the outcome on this book. It was a solid book, but did not have a lot of eye appeal, especially on this interior. So, big upgrades we've accomplished already. Really feel humbled to think that people trust me with books like this. I think even in the condition it was in, I don't know, that's easily a $3,000-$4,000 book, maybe $4,500. I think when we're done with it, we're going to be presenting a much better book, more eye appeal, higher grade. I'm cleaning the area now because I'm going to move into the mending, and that means I'm going to be wetting the page here in place on my hobby mat. I want to make sure I'd really like the page to be as flat as glass. So I want to make sure there's just no little eraser crumbs or anything on my hobby mat underneath this page. So I have Hollytex under and Hollytex over. We're going to do a little sandwich. I'm going to use calcium hydroxide. This is 25% saturated. You can check my other videos for how to make that up. I've shown that many times in earlier videos. And this is a misting bottle. Now, calcium hydroxide is stable. It's light stable, so it does not need to be in a dark misting bottle. I have this dark bottle for other solutions that are photosensitive, and I just happen to have it in there. So don't worry about that. You can have a clear bottle, no problem. And what I'm doing here is wetting the page while it's already in the Hollytex sandwich. The Hollytex is very wettable, so it wicks the calcium hydroxide really readily. This paper doesn't have a lot of sizing on it, so the paper generally wicks the sizing or wicks the calcium hydroxide quite well as well. However, I'm really trying to minimize how much total water I put into this page because of the instability of that ink. So I'm sort of compromising here, trying to get the page wet and flat, get it all expanded. So what's happening though is, as you can see, certain areas on the page, you can tell because they've already become translucent, have wetted quite nicely. Those areas are expanding because the water gets into the cellulose matrix, expands it. Other parts of the page are still dry and they're not expanding, so that's creating all this cockling or these wrinkles. So I'm doing my best to wet the whole page and to smooth it out, because again, I want the whole page to be as smooth, ideally as smooth as a piece of glass. And I'm looking at it just saying, well, gee, there's a lot of cockling here. I'm going to wet the page directly in order to address this. Now, ordinarily, I wouldn't be trying to just barely get the whole page damp. And this is a much easier, this typically isn't a problem because I can just saturate the whole page. So I use my other spray bottle that isn't misting, and it actually sprays quite a bit more volume, and I can wet the whole page quickly, and I can get it flat really quickly. But because I'm trying to walk this tightrope with just barely getting enough water into the paper to expand it, I am having to take an inordinate amount of time flattening this page out and making sure that there's a uniform amount of minimal saturation on the whole page. And that's why you see me doing all this delicate balancing with the paper. Of course, I'm holding this very gently. I don't recommend that unless you already have a lot of experience handling wet paper. Even then, it's going to occasionally surprise you, so proceed with caution when you lift the paper like I just did without having a Polytex support on it. Now I'm reasonably satisfied the left side is flat, the right side is not. See, one of the issues is this Polytex, I didn't put enough water for the water to saturate the page and wet the Polytex underneath as well. And because of that, that Polytex is still dry. I think in retrospect, had I to do this over again, even though I'm trying to just barely get this page wet, I would have misted the bottom layer of Polytex. There you see I'm very cautious around that rip, and I used my micro spatula to just lift the paper, let it flop into place. Even the paper's own mass can tear it at this point, so I want to be very gentle. As I was saying, in retrospect, after having gone through this, I think probably if I would have misted that Polytex underneath, the bottom Polytex, before laying the cover down, probably would have been able to get this smooth a lot quicker. But we'll get there and live and learn. I suspect it's not very often that I'm going to be in this situation where I'm trying to do these kinds of repairs, but really uncomfortable introducing too much liquid to the page. Typically, I'm doing a full submersion prior to this point, so now I've got the whole thing relatively smooth, and it's all wet, so it's expanded fairly uniformly. And what I'm doing now is just kind of a final test, final pulling everything out very gently, but just trying to get it really smooth, like I said, like a pane of glass now. So that we can start the tear seals with the Japanese paper and the wheat paste. This is tedious, but it's good outcomes on these tear seals are all in the prep. So I could skip showing you all this, and I could just show you the money shot. By the way, I let it sit for about 5 minutes there. That's why you saw that little cross zoom. I could just show you this part where I'm mending it, and then you would maybe get in practice, you would run off and just do this part, and you don't have that same prep work. You don't know what's involved in that prep work. You may not get a very good outcome. So that's why I'm showing the rather tedious smoothing, because like many things in life, most of the work is preparation. The actual laying down of the Tengujo paper is a fraction of the time. So this is the 5 grams per square meter Tengujo, and you saw that I tear it by hand. You don't cut with the scissors. You don't want a sharp edge, and you want a frayed edge that has both a lot of surface area for strength in the repair, but also doesn't have a sharp line that draws your eye to it. Here's my wheat paste. We can use wheat paste or methyl cellulose. I tend to use wheat paste these days because I figured out how to mix it really well. I use a number 5 sable brush. And I don't like to work with a dry brush. You could just grab a glob of the paste and throw it on there, but when your brush is dry, I found the spreading of the paste is not very efficient, so you don't get a nice smooth outcome. So I tend to wet the brush first. You can actually do this with water as well, but I was on camera and I had paste, so I did it with paste. You've heard me say it before, but with the application of the paste, you want to start in the middle, work toward the edges, always brush away from the center of your Tengujo paper. So you're taking those little fibers on the edges that you tore and you're spreading them out over the page, laying them down flat where they'll get maximum strength into that repair. If you pull your brush back toward the center, you'll be taking all those little fibers and you'll be wadding them up. Not only will you be reducing the strength of the repair, you'll also be creating a line there that you can feel with your fingers or see potentially with the naked eye. So very important, pull away from the center. As I go, I'm first applying the paste, and then I'm actually sort of dry brushing the excess paste off. I want a nice, really smooth finish. So the brush strokes get lighter and lighter, and now I'm actually removing excess paste and feathering the edges out. And when that dries, it's going to be almost transparent, almost invisible. I'm going to leave the Hollytex up there and just allow that to dry a little bit. I'm going to move my light source over to the left. So that was the obvious tear. It was just shy of 1 inch. But we have 2 other areas on this side of the page that I think it prudent to repair. One is this bottom corner. It's got a color breaking crease, and that little corner is just begging to fall off. So I'm just going to repair it now. I'm going to reinforce it, I guess I should say now. You'll see me do just a little adjustment with my forceps of the location, rather than lose that little corner. You can see where that crease is. So that was just with dry brush, just enough to keep the Tengujo in place while I load my brush with a little more paste. And now I'll apply the paste. Again, this is Line Co. wheat paste. It's prepared just per the manufacturer's instructions. There are a few tips and tricks to that, and I think I'm going to do a video soon, because while they just tell you the ratio and they tell you to heat it up, I've found that if you just take it and sort of create a mixture and just throw it in the microwave, you don't really get great outcomes with this wheat paste. So I've worked out a few little tips and tricks that I do, and I'll share them with you in a future video. So we had that little spot what I thought could use some reinforcement, and then we have one more area up here. You'll see it's right on the edge by Thor's shoulder. You see where I point to it here? That's a bad crease, where that's that leading edge where a reader might grab the page to turn it, and it could very easily be a tear in the future. So since we're already conserved grade, we've already done the 1 tear seal, I'm going to just go ahead and reinforce that right now as well. And then somebody could enjoy this book. They know that we've done an archival repair, and the book will be stable. So this is the actual manufacturing edge of the Tengujo, where it's a straight line. I'm going to use the fact that it's already straight, but it's going to be cut when I trim it, so we're going to lose that area. And I'm going to use that to affect here by taking that factory straight edge and putting it just off the edge of the comic. And again, we'll get in there with the paste. Start in the center, work our way toward the edges. Initially, we use a little bit of force with the brush to push that paste down into the Japanese paper, into the fibers. And then as we go, less and less force until we're just almost dry brushing. We're actually lifting paste, excess paste off. One of the other things is, as you're working close to the edge here, the paste doesn't stick really well to Hollytext, but it does stick, and it potentially, when you're separating them, you could have a rip or something. So I try to minimize how much of the paste I'm slathering on the area of the Tengujo that is directly over the Hollytext. I could let this dry a little bit more, but frankly I don't need to, and I want to get this page dry. I do not want to leave it setting in water. One of my concerns now is how much bleed I might get. There's a lot of reds on the obverse of this, and so I want to go ahead and get it dried as quickly as possible. Now, because it's not super saturated, this probably is only going to take 2 paper towel changes. I'll do one in 10 minutes and another in maybe an hour. I sincerely appreciate you joining me today. I'm thrilled with how this conservation project is progressing, even though we've had a few speed bumps along the way. Next episode, we'll look at the results of the mending and trim our excess Tengujo paper. Most of the materials I used today are available from Amazon in the affiliate links in the video description if you need any of them for your own conservation efforts. If you enjoyed today's video, please take a few seconds to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Until next time, take care of one another.